All right, so are you ready to dive into a world of Southern secrets and really compelling characters?
Oh, absolutely.
Because today we're looking at Light in August by William Faulkner.
One of the most important works of Southern Gothic literature out there.
It really is. Faulkner takes us deep into the heart of Mississippi to his fictional Yoknapatawpha County.
In the middle of the Depression, too, right? 1932.
Yeah, and you really feel that kind of atmosphere in the writing. Like the South is almost a character itself, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The heat, the social tension, the weight of history, it all just seeps into every page.
Yeah, it's definitely a book you feel in your bones. And one of the first characters we meet, Lena Grove, she embodies that, this young, pregnant woman striking out on her own to find the man who got her pregnant.
I mean, talk about a journey.
Right. In the 1930s South, no less, Lena's an incredible character right from the start. She just radiates this quiet strength.
Definitely. And her story becomes this thread that kind of connects all these other characters and their own struggles, like Joe Christmas, who's arguably the most complex and fascinating character in the whole novel.
Oh, definitely. Joe Christmas, where do you even begin with him? This guy's haunted by his racial identity, which is a huge deal in the Jim Crow South.
And Faulkner never tells us exactly what Joe's background is, does he? I mean, is he black, white, something in between? We just don't know for sure.
And I think that ambiguity is intentional, right?
Absolutely. Because it forces us as readers to confront the same kind of assumptions and prejudices that Joe faces every day. Just by existing in that world, he's a challenge to the whole social order.
And then you bring in Joanna Burden, another character who turns the world of Light in August upside down.
Oh, she's a fascinating one. I mean, Joanna is kind of this outcast in Jefferson, and not just because her family were abolitionists, which is a whole other layer of complexity.
Right, like even generations later, that history still marks her.
Exactly. But it's her relationship with Joe Christmas that really gets people talking. I mean, Scandalous doesn't even begin to cover it.
And then there's her murder right at the start of the book.
Which sets off this whole chain of events that ripples through every single storyline. It's almost like even in death, Joanna refuses to be ignored.
It's like Faulkner is saying that nothing in this world, not even death, can ever truly erase the past. And speaking of how the past kind of hangs over everything, can we talk about the way Faulkner plays with time?
Oh yeah, the timelines are wild in this book.
It's like he takes a bunch of different moments, all these puzzle pieces from different points in time and throws them together, and we as readers are left trying to piece them together.
It definitely keeps you on your toes, constantly trying to figure out how it all connects.
1 minute you're following Lena down a dusty road, and then, bam, you're thrown into a flashback of Joe's childhood trauma, or Reverend Hightower wrestling with his own demons.
And all of that is happening within, span of just a few days in August?
Right. It's masterful, really, how Faulkner pulls it off. It's like we're experiencing these characters' lives through a broken kaleidoscope or something.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. All these fragmented moments reflecting each other.
And then there's Faulkner's language, which is just as layered and complex as his storytelling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't talk about Light in August without talking about how Faulkner uses language. I mean, the way he captures the rhythms of Southern speech, the dialect, it's incredible.
Like you can hear those voices, right? And they're all so distinct.
Exactly. Every character has their own way of speaking, their own rhythm, which really brings them to life. Lena's language, for instance, is straightforward, almost poetic in its simplicity.
Right. But there's this underlying strength to it, too, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It reflects her resilience, her determination. And then you have someone like Joe Christmas, whose thoughts are often these jumbled streams of consciousness, almost like he's trying to outrun his own mind.
Yeah. It's intense to read sometimes, all those fragmented thoughts, but it's also what makes his character so compelling. You're right there with him, in the thick of his struggles.
Exactly. And that's where Faulkner's use of stream of consciousness is so effective. He just pulls us directly into these characters' minds. We experience their thoughts and emotions in real time without any filter.
Yeah, it's raw. And it makes you realize how deeply flawed these characters are, which makes them even more human, right?
Absolutely. They're not heroes or villains. They're just people trying to navigate a really complex world. And speaking of complexity, we got to talk about the title of the book, Light in August. There's so much packed into those 3 words.
Right. It's more than just a time and place.
Way more. I mean, on the surface, it evokes this really specific atmosphere, that hazy, humid light you get in the South.
Which Faulkner himself described, I think, as a lambence, right? Like a kind of glowing...
Yeah, exactly. And he connected it to something ancient, almost primal.
Yeah.
And that sense of something old, something haunting, it permeates the whole novel.
Totally. Like the past is always present, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It hangs over everything, shaping the characters' lives in ways they don't even realize. Like Lena carrying her past with her, literally and figuratively.
And Joe Christmas constantly trying to outrun his family history, even though he doesn't even fully understand it.
It's like Faulkner saying that none of us can escape the past, no matter how hard we try. It's part of who we are, whether we like it or not.
Which is such a powerful and universal theme, right? The past shaping the present.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about another big theme that runs through Light in August. This sense of alienation, of not belonging.
For sure. Almost every character in this book is an outsider in some way, struggling to find their place.
Yeah, you've got Lena, judged for being an unwed mother. Joe, caught between racial lines, never truly accepted anywhere. And even Reverend Hightower, a man of God, ends up ostracized because of his past sins.
It's like Faulkner is holding up a mirror to the human condition and saying, look, we're all a little bit lost, a little bit broken. And in a society that values conformity, that can be a really dangerous thing.
And you really feel that sense of being an outsider, especially in a place like the Jim Crow South, where everything is so defined by race and social hierarchy.
Oh, absolutely. You can't talk about alienation in Light in August without talking about the brutal realities of race and prejudice.
Exactly. And I think Joe Christmas's story really embodies that struggle, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, Joe's whole existence challenges the very idea of racial categories, which were so rigidly enforced in the South.
And it's not just that he's biracial, right? It's that Faulkner never lets us settle into a comfortable label for him.
Exactly. Joe's identity is always in flux, always being questioned, both by himself and by the society around him. He's constantly trying to figure out where he fits in, but there's really no space for someone like him in that world.
Which makes his story all the more tragic, right? He's doomed from the start, in a way, by forces beyond his control.
You could argue that. But there's also a sense of agency in Joe's choices, wouldn't you say? He's not just a passive victim. He makes decisions, often self-destructive ones, that contribute to his own downfall.
True. And that complexity, that mixture of victimhood and agency, is what makes him such a compelling and enduring character. He defies easy categorization, just like the novel itself.
Exactly. And speaking of defying categorization, we have to talk about Faulkner's use of religious themes in Light in August. It's everywhere, from the characters' names to the constant allusions to sin and redemption.
Right. Like, you can't escape it, but it's never straightforward, is it?
Not at all. Faulkner plays with those religious ideas in really interesting ways. I mean, are these characters truly seeking redemption, or are they trapped in a cycle of sin and suffering they can't break free from? It's almost like he's using religious imagery to critique the hypocrisy he sees in the South's version of Christianity.
Exactly. Like, there's this constant tension between the religious ideals people claim to uphold and the brutal realities of their actions. And it makes you question whether true redemption is even possible in this world Faulkner has created.
Right. Like, is there any escaping the darkness? Take Joe Christmas's ending, for instance. Is it a tragic defeat, a kind of twisted victory, or something else entirely? Faulkner leaves it open to interpretation.
Which is what makes this book so ripe for discussion, right? It sparks all these questions, makes you want to analyze every detail, every line.
Definitely. And that's the mark of a truly great novel, isn't it? It stays with you long after you've finished reading. Makes you think, makes you feel, makes you question everything.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we come to the end of our deep dive into William Faulkner's Light in August, I'm curious, what resonates most with you? What will you be thinking about long after this conversation is over?
For me, it's the power of the past. How it shapes us, haunts us, defines us, even when we try to outrun it. But it's also about the possibility of hope, however fragile it may seem. Lena Grove's journey reminds us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure.
Beautifully said. And with that thought-provoking image, we'll leave you to ponder the complexities of Light in August. It's a book that demands to be read, reread, and discussed, so I encourage you to dive in and discover its power for yourself. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dive conversations going.